the topic that you see in hand right there, our studio shills are shilling for the studio, and we're going to get into why what Jan Camp is saying is not necessarily true. I'm Christ I Am Disciple. You're watching my channel. If you like what you're seeing, you can like, share, subscribe. Also, do me a favor and smash that like button if you like what you're seeing. This is a stream brought to you by L.I.V.E. L.I.V.E products. Live now. We're live now. And also, the people in the Trinidad and Tobago area that want to order L.I.V.E products, understand that you can call or WhatsApp this number, 319-478-8319-4788. All praise be to the Most High God. The Most High God comes first. Let's get it. First of all, let me explain box office to you guys one more time. We did a longer video back in yesterday, which was the 7th. Today is the 8th. And we were validating what 4KO said concerning the break-even point for Superman 2025. And in so doing, we found out actually that studios collect a lot of revenue, especially in the early weeks. Almost 90% of the revenue is collected by studios in the earlier weeks, as is confirmed here in this AI overview. Studios typically collect between 40 to 90% of ticket sales and revenue, with special percentage varying based on factors like the film's popularity, the theater's location, domestic and international length of time the movie has been playing. Domestic North America box office often splits from between 50 to 60% in the first few weeks for major studios, while the international splits around 40%. Now, let me just say this. It's not 50 to 60%, and we'll prove it. I'll prove it to you in a few minutes. In some international markets like China, studios may receive a small percentage of around 25%. So early on, studios collect a huge amount of that money, all right? Almost 90% of the revenue is collected by the studios, 10% by the cinemas. And as the movie progresses onwards, it gets lower and lower and lower and lower until they get to maybe a 50-50 split. This is domestically. Internationally, on the other hand, they collect significantly less. They may collect an optimum 45%, maybe even 40% of the revenue in the early portions of the time, and then it goes down, down, down as you stretch it out because the cinemas need to get more money, right? So having said that, that's what this is basically saying. I want to let you know, when I crunched the numbers the last time, I had to correct everything. Because when you look at the Batman, to get the kind of profit that the Batman says it claims it was making, I will show you, you had to crunch 90% in the cinema of ticket sales domestically, and internationally at least 45%, 40 to 45% to get that kind of profit, okay? When we consider the production budget. Now, let me explain a couple of things about how movies actually make money, okay? And how they either break even or they don't. You have to compare the cost of making the movie, which is the production budget, and then the cost of distributing that movie and advertising it, which is known as the advertising and what the fuck is the name I'm linking up? Promotion, right? Advertising and promotion of the movie. This involves billboards, it involves advertisements, it involves picture stuff, social media, paying YouTube, paying social media influencers, etc., 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 right? Okay, so now that you know how a movie is made, understand it's a percentage of the gross that actually goes to the studio, and that's what either makes the studio profit or not. Okay, so we're going to look at that for Superman, all right? And that's what's spelled out in front of you in terms of the revenues collected from ticket sales. Okay, so Superman, as it stands right now, has $564 million, roughly, grossed in the cinema. Okay, now its production budget was reported by Warner Bros. To be $225 million. Okay, that's what they reported. Okay, we know that we have evidence to show that the production budget could be anywhere between 225 and 363 million, based on the Ohio tax exemption that Warner Bros. Filed to the Ohio State, in which they wanted some tax exemptions as they were doing production there on Superman. So it's anywhere between 225 and 363 million. It's somewhere in between that number. They would have had tax exemptions, sponsorships, and so on that may have covered a decent portion, a decent chunk of that 363 million. And that's why I said I don't think 225 million is the actual amount that they came down to for the production budget. I do think, though, that it's somewhere between 225 and 363 million. I think it's about a $300 million movie. Nonetheless, it's not what I think. I'm going to use their numbers, and I'm going to give you the best possible outcome. Okay? All right. It opened in 4,135 cinemas domestically. Okay? All right. All right. So, right now its domestic box office stands at $322 million. Its international box office, $242 million. So, if we want to know how much it earned, we're looking at 90% of 322 million, and we're looking at 40 to 45% of 242 million. That would be what it earned for the studio. Okay? And then the cost would be its budget here plus its advertising revenue. What cost? Advertising cost, the distribution cost, the promotion cost, right? And for that, we're going to go here. Oops, wrong thing. Oh, fuck you. Fuck you. Let's see if I can find it here real quick. Yeah. Fucking asshole. What the fuck? Fuck you. Bitch ass motherfucker. Fuck. There you go. Okay, I got it back. Son of a bitch. Okay, here it is. You're gonna have to excuse all my cursing. Right. The marketing budget for 2025 Superman is reported to be about $200 million. Now, Warner Brothers stated that they thought it was $100 million. Okay? But we know it's more than $100 million. Now, typically speaking, usually the budgets for marketing is about 125 to 150 million. They're saying it's about, the Warner Brothers claimed it was 100 million. So I think there are two things where Warner Brothers is just underestimating the totals to make it look profitable. Okay? It is what it is. We just let it be. So we're going to go with whatever is reported here, which is 200 million, what we see in front of us. Okay? So the production budget, which is 225 million, plus 200 million gives us 425 million. That's the overall cost for this movie. Now, it could be more than that because, once again, we're talking about the movie having, a huge budget of 363 million. It could be, instead of being 225 million, it could be 75 million more, which I think is more like it, which would be 300 million. But we'll look at all those things, but let's just do the best possible scenario where we say, okay, you know what? This movie, it did 225 million, whatever you see in front of you here. Okay, the marketing's kind of expensive. They kind of pushed it a little bit more, 200 million. So we'll go with that, okay? Good. So 200 million plus 225 million is 425 million. So the movie needs to make 425 million for the studio to break even. Not to make a profit, just to break even. All right? Let's go with that. So let's work it out and see what we get. So let's go to Superman. Has to make 425, right? Let's work out our percentages then. 90% of 322 million. Let's see what that is. 90% is the same thing as 0.9 by how much? 322 million. That's $289.8 million. Roughly 290 million. Okay? So it's about 290 million. 290 million. And internationally, we're looking at 40 to 45% of 242 million. So let's go 0.4. Let's do the best possible scenario. 0.45% of how much? 242 million. All right. That's 108.9 million. We're adding that to 290 million. We get 398.9 million, which means to get to 425 million, right? 425 million, it needs to at least make 27 million more. That's the best case scenario. So it hasn't broken even, but it's close to it. 27 million more, and it breaks even, which means whatever its amount is right now, okay, see what its balance is right now. Its balance is 564 million. 27 million more to that should make it break even, according to our best possible estimations. That means 27 million more. That means that you add 27 million to whatever it has right now, which is 564 million. It needs to make close to $600 million, $591 million to break even. Okay? Now that's the best case scenario with the best possible numbers I could give it. But let me show you why I do that, because let's do the Batman, for example, and I'll come back to this. Okay? So 591 million to break even. This is best possible scenario, right? Okay. But we know that this movie probably cost 75 million more than that. So what basically, instead of 27 million, we're really looking at 102 million. Because if it cost about 300 million to make, then you're looking at 75 million more than 225 million. So if you look at it in that context, 300 million and 200 million for advertising, then you're talking about 500 million. In which case, to make the 500 million, you just add an extra 75 million to that. So instead of 27 million, now we're looking at adding a 75 million to that. That's 102 million we're really looking at for it to make, which means whatever it has right now, which I think is 564 million, you add 102 million to that, and you get 666 million. In other words, this movie really, to break even, needs to make Man of Steel numbers, right? It passes Man of Steel, and it's now going to begin to make profit. That's the truth of the situation. And I believe that's more realistic. And even if you dial it back a bit and you say, all right, this advertising was 150 million, I don't think so. I think this advertising was out of the world. I think they put in a lot of money to make the advertising go. But let's just say 150 million. That means I have to take away, instead of 75 million more, now I'm cutting 50 million from it, which means instead of 75 million more, it's 25 million more, which means it would be 50 million more, or shall I say, 25 million more than what we've had, because now you're adding on an extra 50 million. Okay, so 25 million added on to 27 million. Oops, 27 and 27, now 25, right? Gives us 52 million more. And if it's 52 million more than whatever it has right now, then that total comes to 616 million. So roughly 620 million if its advertising budget was 150 million. So what I'm saying is that Superman has to make somewhere between, or more realistically speaking, I think Superman has to make Man of Steel numbers. That's the truth. I think the budget was about 300 million. I think this movie's like The Flash. It had a big budget. No matter how much, he probably got in tax credits and stuff, maybe 63 million. It's to try and get sponsors for this movie. They probably didn't get the sponsorship that they wanted. So I feel like it probably buffered off 63 million, shaved off 63 million, but still, because remember, James Gunn had to do reshoots, they had to put in money for reshoots and all these things. So I think this movie did cost a ton, like The Flash. If you look at the Flash movie, by the way, I want to show you something. I'm looking for the Flash movie. There you go. Let's show you something. And that was a box office flop. Look, they had the Flash at $200 to $220 million. There's no way in fucking hell the Flash cost $200 to $220 million. Just no way. No way. That's just a straight up lie. This movie was over $300 million it cost to make. And I'm talking about you take tax exemptions and whatever else you can get off of this movie. Way over $300 million. Okay, so to tell me that Superman was 225? Oh, fuck. You're joking, man. We know it costs more than that. We know that. All right, so let's talk about how we get these figures and why. Okay, so if you look at the Batman, for example, okay, the Batman, you see that 772 million it grossed. Okay, I'm going to use the same figures I used for Superman to get the overall box office that the studio earned. Okay, so since this is basically 370 million domestic box office, let's work that out. 90% of 370 million. That's $333 million. 333. Okay. Internationally, we're looking at 45% of 403 million. 45% of 403 million. That's $181 million, roughly, to the nearest million, right? So you take 333 million and you add it to 100 and what did I say? $181 to the nearest million, you get $514 million. So now we have to just know the cost of the Batman movie, and then we're going to look at the profit it made, right? Okay. So looking at 514 million. Remember that, 514. That's what it grossed. Okay, let's look at the cost of it now. We know the production of the Batman is $200 million, okay? Remember, 514 is what we're looking at. So $200 million it cost to make. And its marketing budget was between 120 and 150 million. Let's go with the 150 million, okay? That's $350. $350. And the Batman, again, was 514 million minus 350 million gives me 164 million. Okay? So if it made a profit of, according to the Batman, it made a profit of, hold on a second, let me just, according to them, the Batman earned a profit of 177 million. 164 million is in the ballpark, right? So maybe it's that the marketing campaign was 125 million. And maybe you'll get from there 177, 164 and 25 gives me what? A little bit more than 177 million. So it's somewhere between 125 million the marketing was and 150 million. But it's in the ballpark, right? So my point is that if you're going to calculate how much money the studio earns, this is the critical point here, how much money the studio earns, you're really doing 90% of the domestic and about 45% of the international. Okay? And I know the international changes with different countries and all of that, but that's the way to do it. Okay? So the only thing we need to verify was what was the marketing cost and what was the budget. And these things kind of we usually are within a range. I think that Superman had a budget of about 300 million. So this is how I test out how accurate my calculations were. Now, some people do what is called 2.5 times the budget to find out what the break-even point is. That doesn't always work. Okay? This is the real way. This is the first principles way. The problem with it is studios lie about their production budgets a lot. And they also lie about their advertising budgets a lot. That is the problem. So that's why it's kind of murky. And that's why John Campea could go up on TV and say, oh, Superman has made its profit, it's broken even, and now it's into making profit because he's using the 2.5x multiplier. But that's not necessary, and based on also Warner Brothers numbers. And that's not necessarily the truth of the situation. The truth of the situation is that more than likely this studio's put out a lot of money, definitely put out a whole lot of money on the campaign of Superman. They are getting a lot of discussion about it because it's a hot topic. But having said that, I think the problem with Superman is not its domestic box office. Its domestic box office is doing great, to be honest with you. It's doing great. I'm not going to lie to you. Superman is doing great domestically. 322 million? Do you know where that stands in terms of domestics for DC movies? That's up there with movies like Wonder Woman, Batman v Superman, The Dark Knight Rises, Joker, The Batman, right? It's up there with those movies. Aquaman, it's up there with, it's below all of them, but it's up there with them. So Suicide Squad, it's there with all of those guys, okay? So domestically, it's not doing bad at all. Whether it's artificially done, where the studio's, encouraging people to buy tickets, or it's buying up tickets in certain cinemas. People are saying domestically my cinema's full and here it's this and that, but it's not true because nobody's showing pictures, right? It's all a manufactured way, and maybe people are going to see it in America. It's possible as well, but internationally it's doing very poorly. When you look at Man of Steel numbers, which I'll show you right now, let me show you Man of Steel numbers here. The problem overall with Man of Steel numbers and with Superman numbers is this. See, Man of Steel is the inversion of Superman. It did great internationally. Look at those tremendous numbers internationally. Domestically, it didn't do as good. By the way, these numbers are outdated. If I go Box Office Mojo, see, Superman is the inverse of that. You see? Internationally, it's not doing that great. Domestically, it's doing fantastic, right? So let me, hold on a second. Let me see if I can, let me use Box Office Mojo for Man of Steel. For the more updated, okay, there's Man of Steel right there, and Mojo. There you go. Okay. So these are the more updated figures. That's better. Okay, so let me show you a couple other things, okay? But let me just get these things out of the way here. Let me get rid of this, 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 this. Okay, good. So when you look at the Batman domestically, it was a monster, right? 370, almost 370 million, 369 million, right? Internationally, actually, this was 370 million. So I don't know what's going on. The numbers has a different, whatever. And internationally, it did 402 million. Okay, so it's a monster domestically, right? One of the top DC grossing movies. Only The Dark Knight Rises, and I believe Aquaman and Wonder Woman have done better than this movie domestically. Internationally, it also did pretty good. It did better than domestically. And it grossed $403 million, roughly, right? So why am I showing you the Batman? Because there's no way in hell this movie is going to gross $369 million internationally. That's not happening. Superman's not going to do those numbers. Is it going to get to $400 million domestically? No, that's not going to happen either. Okay, it's just not going to happen. So this movie's never going to pass The Batman. That's not even a thought. Okay, and if anybody thinks it's a thought, you're delusional. Okay, but when you look at Man of Steel numbers, 291 domestically. That means this film needs to have to make, let's see what it is. It has to make like 51 million or $50 million internationally. It still has to gross 51 million dollars internationally to match Man of Steel's domestic, because I said it's an inverse. And then it has to pull off $379 million. What did I say? No, it has to make, what did I say? It needs to have, sorry, my bad. It needs to make $50 million internationally to match what Man of Steel, it's an inversion, see? To match Man of Steel's domestic. And then it has to make, domestically, it has to make, I guess the same thing. It needs to make about, about 50, about 50, what? 57 million dollars domestically to match up with Man of Steel. So 57 million domestically and 50 million internationally to try and match up with Man of Steel, because as you look, this is 562 million. Man of Steel is 670 million. So that's about almost 110 million. It's like 108 million off. And that makes sense. Think about what I'm saying. If the break-even point is Man of Steel, as Grace Randolph and several other people realized, about 670 million, then you're still off by almost 100 and something. You are off by 100 something million dollars. And if that's your break-even point, which is very ironic, if that's your break-even point, you got some work to do. You know what I mean? And it could be that the break-even point is actually 600. Okay, it could be that it's 591 million, right? That's the best case scenario, where you're going with everything that Warner Brothers tells you. It could be that you're dealing with 620 million, which means you're about 60 million off, right? And so 60 million to like 58 million off, which is it gettable with this movie? No, it is not. I'll show you why. Okay, I'll show you why it's not gettable. So let me show you something. The Batman, what I like about this, it shows you the percentages. Also, when you look at the domestic box office, it kind of gives you an idea of how the movie needs to perform. So let's look at the domestic box office for a minute here. And let's look at it by weekend. You can look at it by week as well if you want. And if you look at the Batman's domestic by week, and I'm going to compare it with Superman's domestic by week. Weekend, not week, weekend. Okay. All right. So let's look at Superman. Superman in its second weekend, it opened with 125 million. In the second weekend, it dropped by 53.2%. The third weekend, it dropped by 57.5%. And the fourth weekend, which is this weekend here that passed, it dropped by 45%. It dropped by basically 58% here and then 45%. Okay. All right, cool. Look at the numbers. You're looking at it dropped to 58 million, then 24 million, then 13 million or 14 million. Okay. All right, cool. Now, fourth weekend, its cumulative domestic gross was 316 million. It is currently 6 million more now. It's at 322 million. 6 million more. Okay, so it didn't change that much. It changed, but not that much. Okay, I want to show you something concerning the fourth weekend and how much this movie could gross domestically for the next couple of weeks. And when you look at that, you can look at the Batman. The Batman performed better than Superman, but I'm going to show you something. So the Batman, we have weekends here. It opened with much more money, $34 million. Its first weekend, it dropped by 67 million, which was a 50% drop. Compare that to Superman, who had a 54% drop. In its third weekend, it dropped by 45% to 36 million. And in its fourth weekend, which is the weekend we're talking about, case in point, Superman, it dropped by 44%. 20 million. Look at Superman again. Let's look at Superman. Let's look at Superman. Look, fourth weekend, 14 million. Just see what I'm talking about? And the drop by the Batman was much less than Superman. This is the fourth weekend. So let's do a projection and show you where Superman ends. I can do a projection based off the Batman in a sort of way. I'll show you what I mean. So if you look at the fourth weekend, the Batman grossed $332 million, right? That was in the fourth weekend. And it tops out, at the end of its run, it tops out at 369 million. So it can't do any more domestically. It tops out at 369 million. It doesn't matter what week. We can see by around week 10, it's topped out and it's not really doing much, right? You guys can see that? So basically in its run, it gets from 332 million to 369 million. From 332 million, sorry. So we take away 369 million from 332 million, it made a maximum of 37 million domestically. Now, it probably made a little bit more internationally. Or maybe not. Maybe when you top out like that, you go at the same rate. By that time, you're going at the same rate because you're plateauing off. So everybody's kind of doing the same thing now. So in that case, let's say it did an extra 37 million also internationally. It therefore made an extra 74 million. Now you have to bear in mind two things. The Batman is grossing per week and dropping per week. It's grossing more and it's dropping with lower drops. So it started off grossing more and it's dropping with lower drops. So at week 4, as we can see, it made 20 million and it only dropped by 44%. Whereas Superman, it made 14 million and dropped by 45%. Now, let's not say it also dropped by 58% and it also dropped by 53% in the second and third weeks. So it's dropping faster and it's also making less. So when we look at this gross here of 316 million, we're looking at Superman topping out. If it was the Batman doing the Batman numbers, you would add an extra 37 million to that. But because it's dropping rather faster than the other one, and it's grossing less than the other one, we need to do a percentage of what the Batman was doing. And I'm doing this. This is not really the way to do it, but nonetheless, 14 million over 20 million. That's what the Batman had at the end of its fourth weekend, whereas Superman had a percentage of that, which is 70% of that, right? So Superman grossed 70% of what the Batman grossed in its fourth weekend. And it was dropping at slightly faster rate. But I'm guessing it's going to taper off and everybody's going to drop at about the same rate as you go along. But the point is that this is already 70% of what the Batman's earning. Okay, so my my estimation is that it's going to gross much less than 37 million. That's for sure. And I'm going to just do this is more of a shit thing I'm going to do. I'm going to say that it grosses 70% of what the Batman grossed domestically. So if the Batman grossed 37 million, then maybe Superman grossed 26 million. Right? So let's say domestically it grosses 26 million. The other problem is that as it tapers out, internationally, we don't know if it's going to match this. That's the problem. Could it internationally match this as it's tapering out? But the best case scenario is that domestically, it makes 26 million. Let's say that, okay, off the cup. That means whatever it's grossed here, 26 million more, it could end at somewhere around 348 million. Best case scenario, 350 million. Now, I don't know if it will, but that's not a bad figure. That's a great figure, okay? That's better than BVS. That's better than the Suicide Squad. You know, it's not better than a Batman. And then internationally, maybe it tapers out. Let's say it matches it somehow. So it does also 26 million there. Then we're looking at 266 million, right? 266 million. And we're looking at 348 million, okay? And when you add those together, 200 and what did I say, 66 million and 348 million, you get to 614 million. And 614 million is close enough that if you've had an advertising budget of 150 million and you had, I know that's not realistic, that's not what happened, and you had a budget of 225 to 300 million budget, then you get something like this. But I do believe that this is not enough to break even. I think the truth is, and Grace Randolph was right, to break even, you probably have to do Man of Steel numbers. And this, best case scenario, ain't doing it. And ain't cutting it. So when John Campion is talking about, oh, it needs 500 and whatever to break even, no. And this is the best case scenario I just gave you, because international box office is trailing domestic box office. So we don't really know if those ballpark figures I just talked to you about, if they're only even going to land that. You know what I'm saying? I want to show you something else. So I'm going to show you something about Man of Steel. So we're going really comprehensive on your ass today, aren't we? But I want to show you something. I got to show you. Man of Steel. I don't need this anymore. Man of Steel. So Man of Steel. What was Man of Steel's budget? 225 million. Okay. And what was its marketing budget? Let me see. Its marketing budget was... Let's see. What did they say it was? Man of Steel, the global marketing budget for the movie Man of Steel was 125 million. So, with 225 million, 125 million, you're looking at 350 million you needed to make, the studio needed to make to break even for Man of Steel. Right? Okay. So let's have a look. So just to bear it in mind, you have 125 million plus 225 million for Man of Steel. So 350 million is what you need to break even for Man of Steel. Okay, good. Let's see how much the movie actually grossed in cinemas. Here's Man of Steel right here. So we're saying 90% of 291 million is what it grossed domestically. Okay, so 90% of that is 262 million. 262. All right, 262 million is what roughly it grossed domestically. Let's see internationally what it grossed. Internationally, we're looking at 45% of 379 million. So let's see. 379 million by 45%. So basically, roughly right off to the nearest million, 171 million. So 171 million plus 262 million gives us 433 million. And when you subtract that from 350 million, which is what it needed to break even, it basically made $83 million profit, right? Because it exceeded what it needed to make. So it made about 83 million, probably less. I think there are some reports that it made 47 million, which means one of those things is bigger than it should be. Smaller than it should be. Probably it's the advertising budget, or it could even be the production budget, because they say it was about 47 million made. All right. But the point is, Man of Steel cleared its midpoint. And what was its midpoint? If we're saying 83 million is the profit it made, then you have to deduct that from 670 million. And its midpoint for Man of Steel was 587 million because its marketing budget wasn't that big. So it needed to make 587 million to break even. That's what it basically saying. But if they said that the profit was 47 million, which sounds more like it, then when you take that away from 670 million, it needed to make 623 million to break even. That sounds more realistic. So I feel like the 623 million was actually the amount Man of Steel needed to make, and it made it, and it made a little excess. So I believe this is more the figure that you're looking at. I know it was 590 something million, I just saw it, but I think this is more the figure. So when these shills come out there and say, that Man of Steel was a flop, or it wasn't good, it was a disappointment to the studio, what exactly is James Gunn's Superman then? And the thing that's letting down James Gunn's Superman, as we can clearly see, is the international box office. Ain't nobody buying this Superman. Ain't nobody want to see this Superman. The thing that let down this Superman movie is the international box office. It's just what it is. It's what it is. It's not doing bad domestically at all, but internationally. Now, I want to say this, though. I'm going to put this caveat to everybody here. I did not expect this movie to make so much money. There were people from the jump saying it will make about 600 and something million, but it still won't make profit. I didn't expect this movie to get that far. Now, I don't know, shout out to 4KO again, and shout out to Harsh Critics out there. 4KO, Harsh Critics went in on Mr. Roca, Mr. Michael Roca, who said that, maybe the fans are so dumb to pick Jurassic World over Superman and Fantastic Four. Again, I don't know why you would attack the fans on that, and I've already covered that some other time. Fans are fans, customers are customers. Whatever customers choose to do, they choose to do. You know what I'm saying? They're always right. You don't say that the customer is stupid. That's dumb. They say a customer is stupid. They didn't buy my product, so they're stupid. No. People have different tastes, and they do what they want to do. And that's just that. You can't stop them from doing what they want to do. I'm a business person myself. I sell products and goods. If they decide to bypass my products and goods and go and buy some other product and good, they're not stupid for doing that. So that's illogical thinking. That's a fanboy thinking. That's somebody shilling for a studio thinking. Now, some people who have seen Fantastic Four, they say that it's a better movie than Superman. And by the way, what is Fantastic Four doing in the cinemas right now? Let me show you guys. Fantastic Four First Steps. It's at 212 million domestically. Internationally, it's at 170 million. Worldwide, it's grossed $382 million. So it may cross $400 million. I think it cost $200 million to make. I don't know how much it costs for their advertising. Let's see what it costs for their advertising here. Marketing cost for Fantastic Four First Steps. Let's see what it cost. They're saying also that Fantastic Four cost $100 million for marketing. $200 million for production, $100 million for marketing. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I think Fantastic Four cost a little bit more for marketing as well. They're being very ridiculous when they say that. Because if you're telling me the movie's a flop unless it gets to 600 million, then its marketing cost has to be around about the same marketing cost as Superman. Come on now. And they were in the Super Bowl and all that? Nah, come on now. Come on now. Nah, I don't buy this $100 million for marketing. I just don't buy that. So let's see. Basically, 200 million production budget. Let's go with 150 million for marketing, probably even more. Let's just go with 150 million for marketing. That means 350 million you got to get. Okay? So far, let's see where they are at. Fantastic Four. Domestically, 212 million. I got to get my calculator here. All right, so 212, 90% of that would be 191 million. 191. Okay? 191. And internationally, it made 170 million. So 191, 170 million. So we're multiplying that by 45. So that's 77 million, okay? So it's made 77 million plus 191 million. So far, it's made 268 million. It needs to make 350 million. So if it has to make 350 million to break even, that means that it is in arrears by 82 million. 82 million. So 82 million in arrears. It could be more to make this movie. That's the thing. They're being very conservative with these numbers. I don't know the specifics between Fantastic Four to make 600 million. I mean, you got to be doing this almost the same stuff as Superman in your production strategy and whatever. But anyway, you say it's 82 million, whatever. So 82 million more, add 82 million to 382 million. So it needs to make about 464 million. I believe they're underplaying so much stuff in this. It's not funny. That's why I said, if you're going to do advertising costs, you got to really do advertising costs. You know what I'm saying? So it needs to make 464 million. That's what it's saying. Now, I don't believe that. Any film that costs about 200 million, you gotta make a substantial amount of money. But this is what we're getting right now. So it is what it is. So when it makes 464 million, it'll be able to cover that 350 million. I think those numbers are conservative, though. I think Fantastic Four probably costs more than the 200 million that they're claiming it is. It is a cheaper movie than Superman, but still, I mean, I think the budget probably was a little bit more expensive than 200 million. I don't know how they came down to that. Again, they would have gotten tax cuts, they would have gotten sponsorships, but I just don't think it still cost about 200 million. I just don't think so. But it is what it is. All right, so Fantastic Four needs to make 464 million. So from 382 million, it needs to make 464 million. So 382 million right now. Oh, shit. So that means it still has 82 million to make to break even. All right. I believe it needs to make about 500 million to break even. That's the truth. That's my thoughts on it. Yeah. So when these shows show to you, understand where they're coming from, okay? Because they'll shill away really hard, okay? And the reality of the situation is this movie hasn't broken even, Superman, and obviously the Fantastic Four First Steps hasn't broken even either. It's a slightly cheaper film to make, and I don't know what the advertising budget was, but I'm assuming it's about $150 million. They always put that standard asterisk on there. It could be 375 million. We don't know, right? They did pour out a lot of money coming down the stretch before the movie came out. They put a lot of money into the advertising, so you just never know how much money they put out. But at the end of the day, it needs about 500 million to break even, which means it's at 382 million. You're looking at something like what 100 and 100 and 128 million, about 100 and no, sorry, 118 million to break even. It's about 118 million needs to break even. And how is it going so far? Can it make that? Let's see. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so it had, in the second weekend, it had a 67% drop. We have to see what its third weekend will look like, if it will taper out and have some legs, or if it will just keep on plummeting. That's the question. 67.1% drop is a significant drop, no doubt about that. But domestically, it's not good, really. And internationally, it's even less. So I don't know, man. Yeah, now 118 million looks like a ways off, the way how it's making its money. And that's just a break even. I don't even know if it'll make any profit. So, yeah, it's got an uphill battle right there. So we'll have to see what this weekend shows for it, and we'll know if it's going to flop or not. If it's going to be another Marvel flop. And I know why these Marvel movies are flopping, because Zack Snyder's no longer around. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Zack Snyder, all of Zack Snyder's ideas, they were raping, and that's how they got their Infinity War thing and, the end game. I know they robbed Zack Snyder of his ideas, and they're trying to work in tandem now with James Gunn, because James Gunn is a Marvel director. I wish them the best, but honestly speaking, I see this thing failing hard. And that's too bad. So that is my take on this. I almost took an hour. You guys, if you have any comments you want to say, put your comments out there as soon as you can. But that is my take on this. I will see you guys again. That is